says recording in progress. Okay. Hello, everyone. Hello, kids and parents. Welcome to our week 5 of Kids in the Kitchen. This week, we are going to cover a yeast dough. So we're going to make a pizza dough. Pretty much all yeast doughs are very similar. So we thought a pizza dough would be a fun one to do. And once you know how to make a pizza dough, you're laughing. You can kind of put it together just about any time. So it's relatively simple. We're going to do that fairly quickly here. We're also going to do a veggie tomato sauce. The veggie tomato sauce recipe, if you haven't found it already, is in our Time Together cookbook, of which you should have a PDF copy of. And it is on page, I'm not sure exactly what the PDF, but you'll have that in your PDF. It'll tell you. Actually, one moment, we'll find it here for you guys if you haven't. Oh, here it is. It's on page 33 on your PDF of the Our Time Together cookbook. If you haven't done so already, I already noticed most of you have typed in your last names, which we really appreciate. It helps us keep attendance. So if you haven't, if you're just joining us now, if you could please type your last name into the chat box, and we will check you off as being present. So before we go too much further, we're going to we have to start our yeast blooming, or kind of like start our, I guess it is called blooming, but so we need to start that process. If you haven't already made your pizza dough, I had suggested to make it the night before. It's really handy, and this is mine from the night before. I have one pizza that we're going to show you that's going into the oven, and then we will build a fresh batch of pizza dough, and then we will, and we're going to make our tomato sauce, and then we will also build a couple unique pizzas with that, and show you kind of a couple options as well that we can do. So pretty straightforward. The first thing that I wanted, yes.
Question. Can I use quick rising yeast?
Yes, you can use quick rising yeast. It will absolutely fine. I'm using active dry yeast, but quick rising yeast will work just fine. Also, in the recipe of the pizza dough, I had made a mistake in there. I'm wondering if anybody had caught that mistake at all. Underneath the ingredients, I have 3/4 of a cup or 250 mLs of warm water. Those are not the same thing. 3/4 of a cup is different than 250 mLs. However, I've gone through and made this recipe numerous times, and it works out just fine. Again, I've included an extra half a cup of flour as needed, which of course just makes it work just fine. So what I have here is just shy of a cup of warm water. Now, it can't be hot to touch, but it certainly can be warm. We're going to take a teaspoon of sugar and let that go in there first and just give it a swirl so it dissolves. And then we're going to take a teaspoon of your active yeast, and you're going to sprinkle this in slowly. If you dump it in all at once, it will form kind of a clump, and it will seal some of the yeast into the middle of it, and that won't get wet. So you have to kind of sprinkle the yeast in, and it starts to, the yeast actually is a live organism, and it starts to eat the sugar. It likes sugar, it likes warmth, and it likes moisture. So as soon as you add that, you're going to see that your yeast starts to get frothy and starts to get kind of active. So we'll set that out of the way. You need typically 10 to 15 minutes for that to do, to kind of get frothy and bubbly. And so you can give it a little bit longer than that. We're going to be about 15, 20 minutes. So that will work just fine. So we'll set that off. Very first step at making your yeast dough is getting the yeast started like that. Then I'm going to show you our pizza that we've made here. Actually, for one of the pizzas tonight, again, the great news about this is that you open your fridge and see, what do I have to use up to put on a pizza. I certainly do like, there's certain things that I go out of my way to get. For example, if I'm feeling like a pepperoni pizza, you know, something else isn't going to do. I want pepperoni. But aside from that, you know, we usually build a couple of our pizzas that are just using things up, and they're usually end up being a surprisingly delicious results, simply because they're things that we hadn't thought of. A couple nights ago, we did a barbecue chicken pizza with a bunch of unique things on it. We've used everything, so don't be limited to you know, very specific things. Try to be open-minded about it. One of the things that I had quite a few vegetables in the fridge, and so I have some zucchini, mushrooms, zucchini, mushrooms, onion, and peppers that I've sauteed. I did a quick saute. The only reason I did the saute on that, first of all, you have an opportunity to make them flavorful, but also those are vegetables that are fairly high in water. And so a quick saute gets rid of some of that moisture out of them. And that way, when you put them on the pizza, then your pizza's not quite so soggy. All right, so this is the pizza that I'm going to put in the oven. So we'll have at least something to look at before our class is done. So this is one of these pizza doughs. So a quarter of your recipe that I allowed to proof, and then we've rolled it out. And on it, I put our beautiful tomato sauce, of which we're going to make. So that's mine there. And I just put assorted meats, and then I put some of those vegetables on there as well. So I'm going to pop that into the oven, 425 degrees. We're going to set a timer for, I'll set a timer for 10 minutes so we can kind of see what that looks like at 10 minutes. Okay, and then we can get started building our veggie tomato sauce. So we're going to turn our pot on. If I'm going too quick, just let me know. If some of you may have made this already, and some of you may be making it for this evening as well. So we're going to turn our burner on, kind of medium to medium high. We're going to get a little bit of olive oil into the pan. I'm making a half a batch just to let you know. We did a half batch yesterday and let it cool down. It's nice to be able to work with a cool sauce. It will still work fine for you if you're going to build it and use it tonight. However, I really like using the sauce built the day before, and then it's cool. And then the dough was made the day before as well. So in reality, it makes it really easy if you get this stuff done one day ahead of time. Meal prep. Okay, so into our pot that we have heating up with some oil, we're going to put a bunch of veggies. I like this sauce because we really thought the flavor was delicious at the end. It's a very simple sauce, so feel free to jazz it up as much as you want. But it's got lots of veggies in it, but it doesn't taste like it. It tastes flavorful, and it goes great on a pizza or a pasta. As you can see, if you've looked at the recipe, they actually recommend it to go onto a pizza. All right, so I've chopped up my celery. Again, another opportunity to work on your knife skills. Again, don't have to go quick or anything like that, but just take your time, get the cut nice, and be careful, of course, keep your fingers out of the way, that type of thing. The recipe asked for, I believe it was some red and green pepper. We're using red and orange pepper, and that's just perfectly fine. So don't go and purchase, specific ingredients. Chef the Pup loves pepper, so she's always close by if I'm cutting up a pepper. And so we'll dice our peppers up a little bit, and we'll get some of this into the pot fairly quickly here. And like I said, you could add whatever you want to this for sure. Like, it's supposed to be all about the vegetables in this one, so I wouldn't add a meat or anything to it, but it's as far as seasoning it, if you have fresh herbs on hand, it'll be really good as well. So that's our peppers, that's our celery, and we'll do a little bit of onion in there. Okay, so when you're cutting an onion, of course, I leave it so it's not cut all the way through. And I think we've kind of done this before, but an onion is a really good thing to practice cutting. It's usually the most time consuming and the one that people don't like doing the most. But if you get good at it, then of course that's no longer an issue. You usually enjoy it. So once I've gone 2 different ways on it, then I'm going to just cut down into a fairly nice dice here. We noticed too, this sauce that we made, the same one we're making right now, has a really nice consistency to it. So you can kind of see that it's chunky, but not overly chunky. And I'll show you that's to do with the vegetables in it, but it's also to do with the tomatoes. The tomatoes that I had on hand were whole plum tomatoes, canned plum tomatoes. So I had to kind of chop them up with my spoon as I was cooking them, which is absolutely fine. It gave it a really nice texture. All right, so we're going to get those vegetables into the pan. Any questions at all as we continue on? So you can hear that my pot was pretty warm. So Again, not a big deal, but do be aware that as you're preheating a pot like that, when you're adding something, you have to be careful if it is that hot. I'm going to turn it down a little bit more. We don't need it quite that hot. Sometimes as a chef, we do like the pan to be nice and hot because it allows you to move things along fairly quickly as far as cooking them. If which? We eat pizza probably as much as everybody else. I don't know, what is that, twice a week? We do eat a fair bit of pizza. We grill our pizzas quite often. I had considered showing you that tonight. However, there's a lot to cover in our 1 hour. However, just so you know, you can take these doughs like we're going to take tonight, and you can throw them right on the grill, and it's amazing what the outcome is. So if anybody wants, you can contact me, and we can give you more information on that. It's a really fun one. All right, so we'll peel our garlic, and we're going to just give it a little chop. It's going to get in there and cook, and it's not going to be super strong anyway. So you don't have to be like, oh, we got to get this minced really, really fine. So I just got to hit it. I've already kind of smacked it to help peel it. And then we'll just chop it up. Nothing too serious at all. It's smelling really good in here with the vegetables already sauteing in the olive oil. That's a beautiful start to things there. Then we'll add our garlic. Give it a little more heat. You want to hear that it's cooking. So if it at any point that it stops giving you that a little bit of noise coming from the pan, then you want to add a little bit of heat to it. Just turn the heat up a little bit. Okay, so that's all coming together. We're going to give that just a moment or two because you want those vegetables to be tender before we add any of the liquid. It helps just cook everything down. Yeah. Yeah, so the recipe says you want to cook your onion, celery, peppers, and garlic until soft and just starting to brown. I personally don't think you have to go to that stage of browning it by any means, but it does, of course, you want the vegetables nice and tender. And I'm going to show you what we got here. So I hope yours looks something like that. Okay, we'll get that back cooking again. Now we're going to get organized to add a few things to it. So we have our canned tomatoes. Again, I'm adding half of what it was asked for in the recipe, which was a 796 ml can. And that could be diced tomatoes. It could be just about anything. It could be crushed tomatoes. It could be diced tomatoes. And in this particular case, it could be whole plum tomatoes. And a half a can of tomato paste. All right, so, and then we're going to add some water. The nice thing about this is you have that opportunity to adjust the consistency of this stock, or I should say of this sauce, just by adding water. Of course, it's quite thick in the beginning. You add some water, let it simmer for quite a while, and it all comes together really, really nice. So in goes our plum tomatoes. So you can kind of see what we got here. Whole plum tomatoes. If you make this sauce and you have more than you need, especially if you're doing a full batch, it freezes really well. And once it's frozen, you can use it for all those things. It would go great over pasta, make for a super healthy meal. Just your favorite pasta with this tomato sauce, and of course a grating of nice Parm cheese or mozzarella on top. And that's something that you can feel good about eating because it would be really healthy, but also quite delicious. So I'm using my wooden spatula here to break up the tomatoes, and I'll keep doing that kind of over the next few minutes here, just to help break them up. As you can see, it adds for a nice texture with the sauce that I have there. So I'm going to add a bit of water. Okay. So the next thing we're going to add is a little bit of basil, a little bit of oregano. And we will add a little bit of salt and pepper. I'd mentioned this in the last class that I like to kind of season as I go. I may end up adding a bit of seasoning at the end, so I'm not aiming for the perfect seasoning right now. I'm aiming just for a basic seasoning, kind of an underlying seasoning right now. We'll taste it at the end and adjust it if necessary. A little bit of kosher salt, a little bit of black pepper. And we'll just give this a stir. Again, breaking up anything as if you have the same scenario that I'm in, just break it up a little bit as you go. And we're going to want that to come to a simmer. If it's been in the pot for a few minutes and it hasn't started to show signs, then turn the heat up a little bit. You're not looking for a rapid boil, but we do need to see some kind of action in the pan there. Very simple sauce, but like I said, we've been quite surprised with how delicious it is. My pizza that's in the oven, we're going to have a quick look at it. The timer just went off. I don't think it's quite done yet, but we are going to have a little look at it. The nice thing about a yeast dough is when it hits when it goes into the oven, any yeast dough, because you have all these little bubbles that are formed because of the yeast, those little bubbles have steam or moisture in them, and they create humidity, which creates steam, and that's what makes your dough rise up. So that's the beautiful thing about yeast dough, is it's really nice to look at after you've popped it into the oven. Oh yeah. So this is coming along really nicely. I'm not going to pull it out for too long. I'm going to pop it right back in there, but it's looking delicious. I'm actually very excited about dinner tonight. Any questions at all? So I'm going to give that pizza another 8 minutes. We will have a look at it after that. So what I'm going to do with our pizza sauce here, sorry, our veggie tomato sauce, I keep on calling it pizza sauce, and of course that's what we're using it for. So there's really, you know, as far as what can go on a pizza on the sauce base of it, there is a lot of different things. And just to give you a couple ideas that we've done over the years, but we've done everything from bacon jam to a flavored mayonnaise to obviously a tomato sauce to barbecue sauce. We've done, tonight I'm actually going to build one. Again, I pulled stuff out of the fridge just to give you an idea how we make pizza around here. I had this jalapeno dip. I'm going to spread that on the base of it, and I'm not sure what I'm going to put on it after that. But again, what you put on the base as your sauce for pizzas can be just about anything. So easily this veggie tomato sauce works well for it. We're going to set it aside, and I'm going to put it over on our stove and let it simmer over there so we can get our pizza dough happening. Yeah, so the pizzas are going to need, at that temperature, they're going to take approximately 20 minutes. Again, the amount of toppings that you add will make a big difference. And depending on, obviously, everybody's oven is a little bit different, as well as how thick or thin your dough is. That will change things as well. What's that? Oh, Veggie. So we're just getting set up to do our pizza dough. So the beginning stages of our pizza dough that I wanted everybody to see. And so we have 2 cups of all-purpose flour here right now. And to that, we're going to add a little bit of kosher salt. I believe it's a teaspoon. 1 teaspoon of kosher salt is going to be added to our 2 cups of flour. I'm going to give that a little stir just to make sure that the salt is kind of spread throughout it. You can see that we've got some nice kind of bubbly action going on with our yeast, and hopefully yours looks the same at this point. I'm just going to turn my tomato sauce down just a smidgen because we want a nice gentle simmer. So what I'm going to do is we're going to form a well in the center, or kind of a divot in the center, and we're going to add our liquid to that. Before you add the last little bit, I always give it one more stir. Sometimes there's a bit of sugar or a little bit of the yeast stuck at the bottom. You want to get it all. Okay, so once you have that in there, you're going to use a fork, and you're just going to stir it around and basically try to incorporate it. It will form, before too long, it will form an actual ball of dough. Not a smooth ball yet, but it will form, it'll kind of form like what we call a shaggy kind of dough. So it's something that's not smooth and elasticy quite yet. Okay, so what I have here is a really nice looking softer dough. It's going to need more flour, just like I mentioned in the recipe. You're going to have a little bit of extra flour handy, and that's going to give us an opportunity to adjust for if it's too sticky. So once you've got it into a little bit of a dough, a ball, then we're going to start working it and adding a bit more flour. You can certainly turn this onto a cutting board or onto your countertop. Is perfectly fine to work with. Kneading yeast dough is actually, I find it kind of therapeutic. Now, people that have done a lot of it would probably say I'm crazy to say that it's therapeutic, but I find working with yeast dough really, really nice. It's just got a nice feel to it. And what happens during this kneading process that we're doing, so when you're working the dough like this, is the flour has gluten in it. And gluten is the structural kind of component. It's a protein, but it's a structural component that is in the pizza dough, or in the flour, I should say. And the more you work it, the more it becomes more elasticy, which is good for a pizza, because you want to be able to have a nice thin pizza crust, but something that's still quite sturdy. So as opposed to when you're making a cake or muffins, you want to work that, the flour that you add to that, as little as possible, because you would like it to be nice and tender. So that's just a little background on why we're kneading our dough. So now that I have it to that stage, any questions at all about yeast dough? Did you guys, have you had a chance to make your yeast dough? And if and did anybody make some last night, and is anybody making it tonight? I'd just like to love to hear kind of where everybody's at for that. So I'm going to take the dough out of the bowl now. I'm going to work it on the cutting board. Now the kneading motion goes a little bit like this. So you want to pull the dough towards yourself and then push away with the palm of your hand. And then you want to give it a turn, and you want to do the same. So it's a motion that goes like this. Again, pushing with the palms of your hand away from yourself. And that kind of makes the dough kind of turn inside out of itself. So it keeps it kind of moving. I haven't tried that, Carly, but it's worth a try for sure. About freezing, baking the crust and freezing it. Back in my early years, I did work at, I don't know if anybody, this is aging myself big time. I worked at a Yellow Submarine, which was a place where you could buy pre-made pizzas that weren't baked yet. And I worked in the back making the pizza crust. And by the hundreds of thousands, it felt like. So yeah, they did it. So I'm pretty sure that this would work fine. Isn't that soft? Now I'm okay, and that's perfectly fine. The reason your dough might not be nice and soft is it may have needed a little bit more liquid or less flour. One or the, either way, the ratio, you'd want a little less flour to water. However, I'm sure that it'll work out just fine. Okay, so this is coming along. This is starting to get nice and silky. So you'll notice the more you knead it, and I'm adding a little flour, but not too much. Again, I don't want it to be too firm, but if it starts to get a little sticky when I'm kneading it, then you're going to just add a little bit of flour. Yes. What I would do today, if you found that your dough is a little too sticky and you're going to work with it today, what I would suggest is that you take your dough and take each of the balls of dough that you've balled up and roll the pizza doughs in on a floury surface. Today, I'm not doing that, but that's a perfectly acceptable way to do it and would allow to kind of absorb some of that extra moisture. So what you'd be doing is taking one of these balls of dough. I would put a little bit of flour down on that surface. I would set this down, a bit more flour on top, and you can take either a rolling pin or you can kind of just stretch it with your hands, and we'll kind of show you a little bit of that. Excellent questions. We're going to, we wanted to knead this for about 5 minutes. I'm probably pretty close to that. And also our pizza in the oven, we want to have another look at it because it's beeping at me. Oh, this is beautiful dough. So you can kind of see what we have there. It's got a silky texture. It's not firm. It's actually quite soft, but I mean, in the same light, it's not sticky and it's not really, really firm. So beautiful dough. What I suggest for when it comes to yeast doughs, and if you're discouraged, don't be. It's just about kind of doing it many, many times, and you get the hang of it and the feel of it. Again, once you've hit that really good dough, now you know what you're looking for, and that way you can have something that you're aiming for next time. Okay, so we're going to set this aside. We're actually going to freeze this one ourselves because we have this pizza to eat and we're not due to eat pizza for a couple more nights. And so we're going to freeze this one for now. So it does freeze well. I know that we had the question, can you bake the shells and freeze them? I believe you could do that, but the dough will also freeze. It requires to be pulled out of the freezer and put into the refrigerator the evening before. And then again, you need to cut it and roll it into balls and let it warm and proof on your countertop at room temperature for about 1.5 hours to 2 hours. So if you do those things, you're in good shape. Yeah. So once your dough is done to that stage, and this would be the stage that you did last night, of course, a little bit of oil on it and cover it with plastic so it doesn't dry out, and you can get that into the refrigerator like you have done already. Okay, so here's our finished pizza. What?
Did you own a pizza shop before you were a chef?
I didn't own a pizza shop, but we.
You say the question.
Yeah. So the question was, did you own a pizza shop before you were a chef? And the answer to that is kind of. We had a restaurant and we served pizza on the menu. So I have made a fair number of pizzas. However, it was my staff that were really good at that. So you can see what we got here. I really like the look of this pizza. And you can see it's got a nice crunch on it on the bottom, and nice crisp. Nothing too serious, but it looks really, really good. What I'm actually going to do is I'm going to set this onto a rack, and that way it doesn't, it gets crispy. It won't get soggy, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Okay, so we're going to slide this off there onto there. Just give my hands a wash, and we're going to build a few more pizzas. And one other thing that we're going to cook as well, we're going to build with our pizza doughs is a calzone. Now, I don't know if any of you have had a calzone, but it's another option to do with this yeast dough. Another really good option, actually, and it follows the same rule as the pizza in that you can put anything in it that you want. It's wide open. So we'll just take a moment to have a little look at our tomato sauce and break things up a little bit again. If you're simmering your tomato sauce, you'd like to simmer it for 20 minutes easy. If at any time it seems too thick, add a little bit more hot water. Okay. We'll just clean things up a little bit here, and then we can have some fun building some pizzas. Any questions at all that I can help with? Okay, so this is the same as what most of you have done, is it's our pizza dough from the night before. You can see it's got a beautiful, soft texture. It's just beautiful. So I had mentioned in the recipe that what you want to do is use the weight of the dough to help stretch it so that it's kind of delicate. And so what I mean by that is I hold it by the edge of the dough and pull it apart, and using the dough, the weight of the dough kind of helps stretch it down. You can't do this quickly. The dough has to kind of yield to the stretching that you're wanting it to do slowly, otherwise you will tear. And once you get a hole in your pizza dough, that could be detrimental because it's hard to patch it up. Okay. And then another thing that you can do as well is you can put it over your fingers, and again, gently kind of pulling it out in each direction, it will slowly get a bit bigger. What I like to do too is you can hold it up, and you can see that I have a little extra dough up here. So you go towards wherever there's a bit of extra dough, and you're going to stretch it out in that one spot. Okay, so that's about as big of a pizza that I'm going to get. So we're going to lay it on, if you're going to cook it this way, you're going to lay it on your parchment paper, and that's kind of ready to go. We're going to do one more here. So we're going to do a pizza, and then like I mentioned, we're going to do a calzone as well with one of these. So the same process as what we've just done. We're actually going to lay it out just like that one. It'll just be, instead of throwing it in the oven without folding it, we're going to give it a fold and kind of crimp the edges. Makes for another presentation.
Right. Maddie and Luca were saying their pizza dough is a bit tough. What can they do to fix it?
A bit tough.
They did it just now.
Oh, okay. That's actually a really good question. It could be, again, that ratio of water, the water to flour ratio. That's a good possibility. My guess is it was the dough a little dry when you were working with it, or a little firm, I should say. That would actually make a big difference right there. Yeah, so a little bit more, you would use a little bit more moisture next time in it. Once the dough is made, there's not much you can do. Yeah, no, the oil, you can't really add oil. All right, so there is our other dough ready to go. So there's our two doughs that are stretched out. And we're going to use, on our pizza, let's do our pizza first. I'm going to use a little bit of our jalapeno dip. Again, have some fun with it. Just anything really goes. If it sounds good to you, that's all that matters. It doesn't have to appeal to a whole bunch of people. No, here, I can do this. The thickness, again, that's totally up to you. You can certainly do a thicker dough, so a little bit less diameter, so not as big of a pizza, and leave the dough a little thicker is absolutely fine. If you want a thinner crust, then of course stretch it so it's quite thin. The other thing that I've done as well is once you've rolled it out, and I think I've suggested that in the recipe, is to let it rise a little bit more again before you finish making it. So that one this one that we've already done had a little more time to rise after I had rolled it out. So those are a couple options. So we're going to take our tomato sauce. So for our calzone, normally these would be rested, and I'm hoping that's what, of course, you guys have done. Just for the sake of timing, we're going to get these built. And so, a couple options. Let's see what we have here. So we have some peppers. I have some cooked bacon, which is always good. We have some mushrooms.
Sugar or vinegar in the sauce?
Sugar or vinegar in the sauce is, again, absolutely, if that's something when you taste it that you think it needs, that's perfectly fine. Sometimes when we do cook with like a canned tomato product, we'll put just a sprinkle of sugar in, not something to give it really a bunch of sweetness. They say it might take some of the kind of sharpness off. So depending on the type of tomatoes you've used, that could help with that for sure. Vinegar, again, if that's something that you think would taste good, then add the vinegar. That's the great thing about cooking, is it anything goes, whatever you like. Yeah. All right, and we have, of course, some fresh Parmesan cheese, and we have some mozzarella, and a couple other just tail ends of cheese that we've had in the fridge. So a great time if you do have, we have a cheese drawer. We're always buying cheese, even though we don't always need it. You can, it's a good opportunity to use up all the little tail ends of the cheese, provided it's something that is, you know, you think is looks good or tastes good. I'm taking my pepperoni stick and I'm just cutting it kind of on the bias like that, and I'm going to get it into the calzone. I'm going to slice up a bit of mushroom to go in the calzone. I'm going to slice it fairly thin. And Chef the Pup also likes mushrooms. That's probably the next in line after the peppers. Okay, and then we'll put a little bit of cheese in there. And a bit of Parmesan cheese on top of that. This is going to be the calzone, yeah. You can tell it's the calzone because all my ingredients are piled in the center. Of course, with the pizza, we're going to spread everything around a little bit. So we'll get a little bit of parm. I like the Parmesan cheese on the pizzas because obviously it has that really nice umami kind of saltiness that I think that it lends itself really, really well to the cheese. We'll also do a little salt and pepper on that as well. Any questions at all? I hope everybody had a successful pizza making session, or if they haven't, that it'll turn out well. All right, so now we're just going to stretch that pizza dough over top. Kind of a half moon type shape. And you want to match it up with the other side. And then what you can do at this point, you can kind of fold it and crimp it around. You want to make sure it doesn't come undone in the oven because, of course, there's going to be liquid and cheese wanting to go everywhere. So it's super helpful if you can make sure that this is sealed up well. And then I usually score the top just a couple times, and that's going to allow steam to escape. Again, steam being in there is not really beneficial. We want the steam to come out, but all that flavor and everything else to stay in. So then what I'm going to do, we've got our pizza shell, and on that pizza shell, of course, we simply have our jalapeno spread. I'm going to put a little bit of cheese on that first. So a little bit of mozzarella. Oh yeah, yeah, I like that. We are a big fan of pineapple. We like our ham and pineapple with the chili shaken on top. It's really simple, but it's one of our favorites for sure. So, and again, it's okay. Everybody has different preferences. The nice thing about making your own pizza is if you do 4, then you have 4 different pizzas to choose from. So that's always nice. I have a little bit of brie here. So we're going to add, it's just a teeny little bit, but we're going to use up our brie. And I have some more fancy kind of fresh mozzarella, so we'll use some of that. Because a little cheese is delicious, but a lot is even better. I always find. Nope. Okay, then I'm going to take these vegetables. Again, this is mushrooms, onions, peppers, and zucchini that I sauteed with a little bit of garlic, and I deglazed it with a little bit of balsamic vinegar. Now, again, there's no definite anything, just you can saute your vegetables, you could add herbs, you could add garlic, you could keep it really simple. So I'm going to top this now with our beautiful sauteed vegetables. I don't want to get too carried away with the amount that I put on it. A lot of times when I make pizza, I have a tendency to want to put too much stuff on top. And the downfall to that, of course, is it's usually running everywhere. So again, once you get it to that stage, you're going to stop. So we're going to have our tomato sauce has been simmering for a few minutes there, and it's starting to get this really nice texture. And I'm really happy with that. Again, same thing as what we've got, what we're using tonight. I'm going to let it simmer for a few more minutes, but it's getting there, and it looks really good. The very last thing that I would do when we're happy with the texture where we're at, I would simply let it cool slightly and taste it. And if we need to, you can add, of course, whatever it is that you feel it needs, whether it be more garlic, salt, pepper, or anything for that matter. Oh, that's awesome. I love that you can individualize your pizzas, right? Everybody can kind of do their own thing with the pizza. So that is super cool. I love that. All right, so we'll get this back on just to a gentle simmer. And we'll finish up our pizzas here. So my fresh mozzarella around with our roasted vegetables and a little bit of brie. Some of the ones that we've done, what's your favorite one? You. So one of the ones that we like to do, and it's maybe a little bit more of an adult pizza, it is pear, a little bit of blue cheese, and some nuts and a little squeeze of honey at the end. That's one that we really like. Last night, again, maybe a bit more of an adult pizza, but last night or the night before, we made a mushroom pizza. So what I did is I sauteed some mushrooms and seasoned it with a little bit of truffle salt. And we left it really, really simple. I put garlic butter on the base, which is another great base, another great kind of layer to have first is garlic butter, then all these flavorful sauteed onions, and a little bit of parm and a teeny little sprinkle of mozzarella cheese. And it was very, very good as well. So there's many, many different options for sure that you can do. Okay, so we're gonna get this one finished and we'll get it into the oven. And then we can kind of talk about next week and I can answer any questions if there is any more. One thing that I should mention as well, that you will get a slightly different result if you make the pizza dough and use it that same day. I wanted to show you the night before method, simply for simplicity and for convenience sake. So that could be something that you'll change the results a little bit. You might find that your dough is a little bit lighter and a little bit fluffier. So that could address some of those issues that we had heard about. And then I'm going to put a little bit of green onion on here. And I might as well use up my bacon as well, because it'd be a shame not to use the bacon. So bacon and green onion on here as well. Okay, a little bit of that. And we'll just crumble the bacon up on there. So yeah, that's kind of the long and short of yeast dough and making your own pizza dough at home. Something that's fun, everybody can get involved. And I think learning to make a yeast dough is kind of like an important life skill and something that you should kind of embrace. Don't shy away from it. Keep on working at it and trying it. So there's our calzone, and there is our pizza that has everything on it that we had left in the house. And so again, it's going to be delicious, and we're using up ingredients at the same time. So that's really handy. So we're going to pop that into our 425-degree oven. We're going to set a timer. Again, I'll set a timer for about 15 minutes, and then we can have a look at it. Okay. So I'm going to cut this one, and we're going to have a little taste here while I'm with you guys, just to see how we've done. Chef the Pup really wishes she could have some of this, but of course she doesn't get to. Okay, that looks really nice. Very good. So I hope you guys have a successful pizza like this one. This turned out really, really well. We opted for the thin crust, and it's delicious. And okay, so for next week we're going to be making a chocolate mousse. The chocolate mousse, of course, won't be for dinner, but it can be for dessert. And it will yield a number of servings. So that's nice because everybody will have a chance to have more than one. And I think the reason I chose a chocolate mousse to do is because I thought it was really important. Everybody should have a dessert recipe up their sleeves that they can make fairly quickly, and something that they can, yeah, and it's easy to memorize. This recipe is very, very simple. There's a few techniques that you kind of have to learn in it, and it's one that I made this recipe for years on a daily basis. And when I was working in a restaurant, and I started off by actually loving chocolate mousse. I still do love it, but I would, every time I made a dessert with the chocolate mousse, I would have a taste of it every single time I pulled it out of the fridge. And then it didn't take long before I was actually, I was tired of chocolate mousse, if you can imagine. However, when I do make it for the family or for friends, it is always well received. And so for that reason, I thought it would be a great one to learn how to make. And I've given another couple desserts there as well that are in our Time Together cookbook. So at the bottom of that, on pages 35 and 37, there is a apple crumble. And again, I love teaching more a technique than an actual recipe that you have to follow perfectly. And what I mean by that is we can switch out ingredients in a crumble. So any fruit will make a crumble pretty much. Apple is a great idea. You can add berries to the apple. You could add rhubarb to the apple. You could certainly do peach instead of the apple. And so there's many different options. And that's where I like to show things that have diversity. And then the chocolate mug cake is always fun. If you are craving something chocolatey and don't have anything on hand, it's done in the microwave, if you can imagine. And I find it works really, really well. We have tested this recipe and a number of other recipes similar to that. And we're always kind of excited that you get an opportunity to build a warm chocolate kind of cake type dessert and get to eat it, within a few minutes. It doesn't take long at all. I do recommend for that one, I like to have vanilla ice cream with it. I do like my dessert. So the chocolate mug cake, I love to have a spoonful of vanilla ice cream on top, and it really balances it out. Very, very nice. The calzone, yeah. So the pizza, yeah, the pizza will take probably 15 to 20 minutes, and the calzone, it might take about 50. It might take just a few minutes more. Simply because it's all kind of tucked together like that. So that can sometimes take a little teeny bit longer. What you're looking for the calzone is for it to be kind of a nice golden brown on the outside, of course, and there should be steam coming out. I do the same thing for the calzone as I do for the pizzas. I lift up the edge and check underneath. So it's one thing to have it brown on top, but of course, if it's still white underneath, it typically needs a bit more time. Hopefully those usually kind of cook together, depending on your oven. So those should work fairly well, just like that. We're going to just take a little peek in our oven and to see how things are kind of coming. Oh yeah. So you can see everything's puffed up really nice on these ones. So that's cool. Again, they're far from done, but this was that yeast dough thing that I was talking about, how you can see everything starts to puff up a little bit. So that looks really nice. So we'll get that back in the oven. Okay. And so if there are any other questions that I can answer, I'd be happy to. I think I'll bring Chef the Pup if everybody would like to see Chef the Pup again. She always likes to say hello. I'll just give my hands a wash. And if anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to answer. Also, the pizza dough that we made tonight, as I mentioned, you can use it on the same night that you make it. This would need a bit more proofing time. Then I would cut it into quarters and roll it again into balls and put it on a plate with a bit of oil. Then you would let that proof again for probably 15, 20 minutes at least. And then you could use that dough. So again, I wanted kind of to have these done and ready to go, simply because if you're going to try to do it, build the dough from beginning to end, you're probably looking at close to an hour just to get your dough ready to go into the oven. So, but ours is starting to grow really nicely. So that's a good indication. I'm wondering, the person that used the instant yeast, how that worked for them. Okay. And here's Chef the Pup. Of course, she loves this view because she gets to see all the food that she doesn't get to have. So it's kind of unfair, but she loves that anyways. So, oh, good. Oh, good, good, good. Oh, what? Okay. Okay, everyone. I want to thank everybody for joining us. Thank you everybody for being here today. And again, look forward to seeing you at week 6, where we make chocolate mousse and we'll talk more about desserts. And I hope everybody has a good week, and we'll sign out, and thank you for everybody being here.